Israelis were bounced out of bed early Monday morning by yet another incoming missile alert, but this time it was just one missile that got shot down before it got anywhere near us. In Iran, it was a different story, as Israeli airstrikes hit multiple targets across this vast country, destroying more ballistic missile launchers and storage depots and military airfields, degrading Iran's ability to keep firing at us and bringing the inevitable end to this war one step closer. The Israeli strike package included the Parchin Air Base, about 30 kilometers from Tehran, where Iranian scientists are known to have conducted tests connected to developing the conventional explosive shell of a nuclear weapon. And speaking of strikes on Iran's nuclear project, President Donald Trump had some additional comments on Sunday about the recent American strikes that hit Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, saying that the greatest damage to Iran's nuclear sites occurred far beneath the surface. Instead of admitting when they've been beaten, the regime in Tehran has responded with sharp threats as the Iranian parliament approved a measure to close the Strait of Hormuz and sent a personal message to Trump saying, "We will activate sleeper terror cells in the United States of America," while the United States military says it has detected signs that Iranian proxies are preparing to strike American military bases in Iraq and in Syria. United States Vice President J.D. Vance also said that Iran's enriched uranium stockpile may not have been completely destroyed, so apparently we'll have to work on that in the coming week. And at the same time, President Trump asked a rhetorical question saying, if the regime in Iran cannot restore Iran's greatness, why shouldn't it be replaced? Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host, Yair Pinto, bringing you all the truth about what's happening in Israel on day 11 of the direct war against Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps. And in the last 24 hours, the IDF has conducted an unusual wave of strikes throughout Iran, but it now faces a new challenge: the missile launches from Shiraz in eastern Iran. The IRGC set up one of its main ballistic missile launch sites in that distant city, including a naval missile unit. The good news for Israel is that these missiles and the launchers are far away from Israel, and so it will be harder for them to be used against the Jewish state. The bad news is, because they're so far away, Israel has also barely touched them so far in this war, and some of them can probably move further west, where it will be easier for them to be fired at Israel. In fact, the IDF assesses that the Iranians have no choice left but to activate these arrays that so far have not been severely damaged, because it's almost all that they have left. Therefore, the IDF struck a site for producing surface-to-surface missiles 2,000 kilometers from Israel overnight between Sunday and Monday. And as part of the effort to deepen air superiority in Iranian skies, the IDF also attacked 6 regime airfields in western and eastern and central Iran. There is a cost to all of this activity, and the IDF is reporting that for the second time since the campaign began, an Israeli UAV was downed in the skies over Iran on Sunday evening. Of course, these drones cost money, and that's not nothing. But it's better to lose money than people. And so far, no piloted Israeli aircraft have been shot down in Iran. On that note, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared on Sunday evening that the Iranian nuclear threat will be removed even if further military actions are required. However, other Israeli officials also said that if Khamenei stops the firing and says that he wants to end it, we will accept that. Of course, the main reason that Israel is more willing now to contemplate a quick end to this campaign is the American attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, Israel is signaling a drive to finish the job. Battle damage assessments using primary satellite imagery and other intelligence signals lead us to the conclusion that the nuclear facility at Natanz was completely destroyed, while tremendous damage was done to the Fordo and the Isfahan facilities. That leaves the threats of Iran's ballistic missile arsenal as the main problem that remains to be confronted, Although, if the Iranians follow through on their threats to attack the Americans, they will be opening themselves up for more strikes by the United States. This could include an expanded package of targets for the Israeli and even the American aircraft, including non-military sites. That brings us back to the Iranian threat to close the Straits of Hormuz. How serious is that threat? The United States has already asked the Chinese to use their influence with Iran to discourage them from taking this step, and China has its own interests in doing so. To explain, the Strait of Hormuz is a narrow passage 33 kilometers wide between Iran and Oman and the United Arab Emirates. It is a strategic corridor through which around 20% of the world's oil supply passes every day. So, what would happen if Iran closes it after the United States strike on Fordo? The price of oil would immediately spike, possibly to as much as $120 per barrel. This would do terrible damage to the already fragile global economy, especially in Asia, and inflation could skyrocket. But there is also cautious optimism that because of Iran also will suffer if the strait will be closed, and it would suffer a lot more if the United States and regional allies applied massive military power to convince them to reopen it again. And with all of that having been said, the Iranian foreign minister landed in Moscow, Russia, on Sunday evening for a meeting with President Putin after Russia's United Nations ambassador said in a meeting at the Security Council that the United States has opened Pandora's box that will lead to new disasters and new sufferings. Iran also sent a personal threat message to the United States president last week, declaring, "If you strike, we will carry out attacks on United States soil." He struck anyway, but experts believe that Khamenei has many reasons to choose a restrained response. One analyst said, "A long war is not good for Tehran either. It will respond with one eye on its rebellious population." So, will the Shiite militias in Iraq join this campaign after not attacking Israel for many months now? There are signs that they are preparing to attack United States bases, but will they follow through? And meanwhile, there has been an Iranian move intended to complicate strikes on nuclear sites. Satellite images show that before the United States strike on a nuclear facilities, dump trucks were filling tunnels in Isfahan apparently to make strikes harder. Yet the United States estimates and they say that at least 3 of the 4 tunnel shafts also collapsed. And back in Israel, on day 626 of the Operation Iron Swords War, the IDF continues fighting on all fronts alongside the war with Iran. The Southern Command of the IDF reports that Division 162 forces continue operating in the Jabalia area of the Gaza Strip, along with other units. While Gaza suffers shortages of goods because they were all stolen by Hamas, on Sunday evening, the IDF Arabic language spokesperson chose to show Gaza's civilians who is to blame for their situation. The IDF scattered leaflets in central Gaza with photos of Hamas gunmen eating fruit and other food in tunnels after seizing the aid flowing into the Gaza Strip by the international community. However, Hamas has apparently agreed to a 2-month pause deal which would include the release of 10 live hostages and the remains of others who died in captivity by Hamas. There are also signs of new negotiations aimed at ending the war, and an Israeli delegation is expected to go to Cairo soon, but expectations for this round of negotiations are low. So guys, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 626 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region taking their orders from Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And guys, a moment before we begin, I want to call on you to stand with Israel in the one war that we are losing, which is the war for the truth. And in this war, we need you. So at TBN Israel, we work day and night to bring you the whole truth of what's happening in Israel so that you will know how to pray for the situation. So, to support us, spread our content as widely as possible and give a click to the subscribe button and help us reach more people with what's happening in Israel. The IDF's offensive campaign in Iran continues, as during the night between Sunday and Monday, some 20 Israel Air Force fighter jets launched a wave of strikes against military targets in western Iran and Tehran, employing more than 30 munitions. In Kermanshah, western Iran, the jets struck infrastructure for missile storage and launched satellites and military radar sites. In Tehran, a surface-to-air missile launcher in the heart of the city was attacked, and according to the IDF spokesperson's unit, Israeli Air Force fighter jets were also conducting strikes in Kermanshah on Monday morning. Additionally, overnight between Sunday and Monday, the Israeli Air Force carried out an Iranian version Operation Focus that the IDF strike 6 regime airfields. What's left of Iran's Air Force, including several F-14s, F-05 and AH-1 aircrafts, were destroyed on the tarmac and runways, tanker aircraft, refueling infrastructure, and also underground structures were all damaged and destroyed. The threat that these aircrafts and facilities might be used against Israeli aircrafts has now been permanently removed. Israel took a loss in this campaign overnight as well, as for the second time since this campaign began, the Iranians succeeded in downing an Air Force UAV drone over western Iran. The UAV, on a launcher hunting mission, was hit by a surface-to-air missile and crashed. The Air Force added in a statement that during the operation activity, a remotely piloted aircraft of the Air Force was downed in the Iran area. There is no concern for information leakage. Also, sirens sounded in the center of Israel during the night because of a single ballistic missile launch from Iran. And according to the IDF, the missile was successfully intercepted. And Magen David Adom reported no casualties and no impacts. A heavier barrage later in the morning included 15 missiles launched in waves over 40 minutes of time, and I had to spend this time in the bomb shelter with my family. So some impacts were reported, causing damage to civilian neighborhoods as well as some light injuries. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on every development regarding the IDF strikes in Iran, and as always, we ask you to help us spread the truth by clicking the subscribe button if you haven't already, so you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Now, I want to talk to you about some other things that are happening here in Israel. As Israel steps up its war and its effort against Iran, thousands of reservists are once again being called back to active duty. And believe me, I know exactly what that feels like. I've been called up more than once. You leave your family, you leave your job and everything familiar and go straight into intense, exhausting conditions. And through all of that, you need to stay strong, focused, and rooted in faith. During my time in reserves, prayer kept me grounded. But physically, I still needed something to help me keep going. That's when I started to use Vinya. Vinya is an Israeli-made supplement from red grape cells. It boosts your blood flow to the heart, to the brain, and to the muscles, which means better focus, more clarity, and the kind of steady energy that gets you going on 18-hour days. So I started taking it during my reserve service, and I'm still taking it today. They also have a coffee version and other methods of taking it like tea that gives you the energy without the crash. So guys, if you want to try it for yourself, go over to vinyatbnisrael.com or call 800-638-1944. Again, that's vinyatbnisrael.com or call 800-638-1944. So faith gave me peace, and Vinya helped me stay strong when it mattered the most. In recent days, numerous reports have appeared in the foreign media about Israeli Air Force strikes on military sites at Shiraz in southern Iran, about 680 kilometers from Tehran. That's because the Revolutionary Guards have established at Shiraz one of their principal ballistic missile launch sites, which also includes a naval missile unit. Additionally, the Imam Javad base in northeast of Shiraz is engaged in the production of missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles, and according to a paper by the Alma Educational Research Center for Israel's Northern Security Challenges, they are located in these locations. Several underground systems and launch shafts have been identified at the site, and a further UAV base was also located 5 kilometers south of Shiraz, part of it dug below ground to improve its survivability against airstrikes. Last October, the Iranian regime used this base to launch missiles towards Israel, and foreign sources claim that Shabab-3 missile launchers are present in the vicinity of the base. To explain, the Iranians established missile bases in the area to form a defensive belt in southern Iran, and at the same time to pose a threat because of their geographic proximity to Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and to American interests in the region. Because the Air Force and the military intelligence are applying very heavy pressure on Iranian launch sites in western Iran, the Iranians have no choice but to activate their arrays in order to threaten Israel. It is important to note that, according to foreign reports, most IDF activity so far has been in western Iran, Khuzestan, central Iran, Natanz and Isfahan, and now Shiraz, as well as Kermanashk, in order to confuse ballistic missile and UAV early warnings and detection systems. Defense officials estimate that the Iranians have no option left but to employ arrays that until now have not been seriously damaged and remain at a high level of readiness. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every strike in Iran, and in a moment, I want to bring you the exclusive truth about the Iranian threats and decisions. But first, click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and let's continue. 4 official sources in the Iranian government told the New York Times in recent days that after the American strike on the nuclear facilities, the atmosphere is one of defeat and national humiliation. And they said that disagreements exist over how to respond. However, that doesn't mean that this is over. After the United States struck Iran's nuclear facilities and warned that any response would meet an even harsher American reaction, the Iranian parliament approved moving ahead with a step that could damage the world's economy, including the United States, without any military action. I am of course talking about the threat to close the Strait of Hormuz. This is not yet a final decision, since the Supreme National Security Council must approve it before the armed forces will be ordered to put it into action. But it is one stage towards realizing this threat. If the Straits of Hormuz are put under an Iranian blockade, even for a short time, it is expected to raise oil prices and thus have broad economic implications. The Strait of Hormuz is a maritime passage only about 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, and it connects the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea. Roughly 20 million barrels of oil pass through it each day, which is roughly 20% of daily world oil consumption. The strait is also used to transport large volumes of liquefied natural gas, mainly from Qatar, and many other goods that feed markets across Asia and also Europe. Any delay, security alert, or incident there can cause disruptions, higher insurance premiums, and also upward pressure on prices for almost everything that we have. Beyond its geographic importance, the strait is critical for Gulf oil exports such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE. Even Iran itself depends on it, and its repeated threats will harm them and their economy. And they have until now refrained from concrete action that would lead to direct confrontation with its neighbors and with China, its main oil consumer. However, weekend oil prices are up 9% already, compared with 5% gains before the preliminary reports. Futures indicate that prices have already risen some 31% since the start of the month, and the price of a barrel of oil is expected to climb to about $80 in the near-term future. JP Morgan analysts also said last week when oil traded at roughly $76 already included an $11 risk premium, reflecting only a 17% probability of a prolonged extreme supply disruption scenario. And at the same time, the bank stressed that closing the Strait of Hormuz would amount to a declaration of war by Iran with potentials for the United States military response. Therefore, the likelihood was still regarded as relatively low. Despite the reports of a possible closing of the strategic waterway, Danish shipping giant Maersk, one of the world's largest maritime carriers, announced that its vessels continue to sail through the Strait of Hormuz, but noted that it may reconsider depending on developments on the ground. A statement by the company said, "We continue to monitor the security risk level for each of our vessels in that area on an ongoing basis and are prepared to take operational action as required." In other words, at this stage, Maersk has not changed its routes, but the statement signals readiness to react quickly if the situation worsens. And according to CNBC, United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio urged China to apply pressure on Iran not to block the vital passage, telling Fox News, "I'm urging the Beijing government to talk to Iran about this issue because they rely heavily on the Strait of Hormuz for their oil." So Rubio's appeal came after Iranian media reported that Parliament had backed the plan to close the strait in response to the American strike. It's important to remember, however, that Parliament lacks authority to decide such a move, and the final decision was passed to the Supreme National Security Council. Rubio added in his comments that if they close the strait, it will be economic suicide for them, for Iran, and we reserve all options to deal with it, but other countries should look at this too. It will hurt other economies far more than ours, the United States of America. Such an escalation would require a response not only from us, but from other countries as well. It's important to point out that other nations, especially dependent on the Strait of Hormuz, include India, Japan, and South Korea. And with all of that in mind, China issued an official response to the American strike on Sunday, condemning the action and saying it increases tensions in the Middle East and pushes the confrontation to an uncontrollable situation. Beijing has not yet responded to the possibility of closing Hormuz. And needless to say, here at TBN Israel, we will continue reporting on these issues, and beyond that, we work hard to win this war for the truth and for people's mind and understandings of what's happening in Israel. So guys, if you want to help us keep spreading the truth, share, support us via the donation button here on YouTube, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button. And we are launching a campaign to share the truth from Israel. If you want to be part of it, go to www.tbn.org/standwithisrael. The American strike in Iran, which came after more than a week of Israeli blows that were delivered to various targets in the Islamic Republic, left heavy damage that raises questions about the continuation of the campaign. According to assessments, the Natanz facility was completely destroyed, and those at Fordo and Isfahan were also badly damaged. Sources in Israel estimated that on Sunday evening, hundreds of kilograms of enriched material were destroyed in the strikes, and clarified if tomorrow Khamenei stops the firing and says he wants to move forward, ending the event, we will accept it. In case someone out there still doesn't understand what this means, the United States attack on Iran was a war-closing blow, or at least it should be. After just 11 short days of Israeli strikes, Iran has lost 60% of its ballistic missile launchers, its senior command and was also eliminated, and its proxies are completely paralyzed. 30 years of construction and hundreds of billions of dollars that the regime invested in death, destruction, and terror have evaporated. Iran cannot win this war, but it is still possible for them to avoid losing everything if they are smart enough to admit defeat. From Israel's perspective, we're very happy at the results that we've achieved so far, but we will only celebrate a victory in this war when the last of our hostages who were kidnapped on October 7, 2023, finally come home from the Gaza Strip. However, there is no indication that the Iranian regime is ready to do the sensible thing and surrender. As of Monday afternoon, it appears that they are still trying to assess the damage from Israeli and American strikes to examine what and who was hit. There is no question that over the past 11 days, the Iranians have taken heavy blows. More than 60% of their missile launchers were struck. They lost control of the skies. All senior military command was wiped out or cannot function for fear of being hit. It is also very doubtful that what's left of their navy can cope with the United States Navy or even with the Israeli Air Force. Beyond that, their proxies, including organizations such as Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and their militias in Iraq and Syria, are currently showing little interest in joining the hostilities to support Iran, which is the whole reason that Iran established them in the first place. Each of these groups has their own reasons for declining to join the battles, but a common theme in all of their statements is an implied acknowledgement that Iran has already lost and they don't want to risk what's left of their capabilities for the sake of a lost cause. But above all, there is also the fact that on Friday night, the IDF eliminated two very important IRGC generals, Saeed Izzadeh and Binam Shajareri. Each of them, and both of them together, were the engine and fuel of all the Iranian proxies. Their removal is a direct and severe blow to every one of the terror organizations that Iran has operated for years. It will take a long time to replace them, and if they can be replaced at all. So, for the foreseeable future, Iran's proxy force are unlikely to be a major factor in this war. So this leads us to the conclusion that Israel and the United States are nearing victory in this war, but there is still a lot of work to be done. For its part, the United States hints that this has made clear that as long as the Iranians do nothing foolish and toy with thoughts of revenge, the campaign can be closed and negotiations can begin to rebuild the region. And on that note, already now, it is clear that soon, or even very soon, the United States will lead the move to expand the Abraham Accords. The entire world has seen Israel's capabilities, from high-tech to intelligence through perfect execution by the Air Force and other operational arrays, and also the partnership with the great power, the United States. But the whole world sees not only the military capabilities, but also the resilience of the Israeli public. Now, with that in mind, President Donald Trump promised to respond to any Iranian revenge for the bombing of the nuclear facilities with far greater force than that dramatic strike he ordered in the Operation Midnight Hammer. His envoy at the United Nations promised in an Emergency Security Council session a destructive response, even to an indirect attack, perhaps a hint to the pro-Iranian militias, but the Ayatollah's regime vow to respond in the time scope and manner that its forces choose, and the United States is on high alert. Two security officials who spoke with NBC News said last night, between Sunday and Monday, that the greatest concern is of a response in the next 48 hours. They emphasized that it is unclear whether the promised revenge by Tehran will occur outside the United States soil or inside it, and this is joined by an NBC report that in the days before the American strike, Iran threatened in a personal message conveyed to Trump that if he ordered a strike on the nuclear facilities, it would activate dormant terror cells inside the United States. As I said yesterday, I urge all our viewers in the United States, in Europe, and elsewhere to be vigilant and to report anything suspicious to the police. This is a very serious situation, and we all need to be careful and responsible. You don't have to live in fear, but you do have to take this very seriously. On that note, it's important to understand that for years, Iran has been trying to carry out terror attacks in countries around the world, with its goals so far being strike Israeli targets. Only this weekend, another such plot was exposed in Cyprus with the arrest of a British citizen of Azeri origin who is suspected of belonging to the Revolutionary Guards. Iran is also responsible for terror attacks against American targets in the past, as its Lebanese proxy Hezbollah carried out the 1983 bombings of the United States Embassy and the United States Marine Barracks in Beirut, in which hundreds of Americans were murdered. And in recent years, there have also been many reports of plots in which Iran tried to carry out assassinations of senior figures on United States soil, and although those plots failed, just the fact that they were attempted is very concerning. Foremost amongst them, an intent to assassinate Trump himself as a revenge for his 2020 order to terminate Quds Force Commander Qasem Soleimani. And immediately after Soleimani was assassinated in Baghdad, Iran responded with a volley of missiles on United States bases in Iraq, a strike that Trump then refrained from answering militarily because no American soldiers were killed. However, in a shadow of NBC's report on that threat to activate Iranian terror cells, the Department of Homeland Security has issued a general terrorism advisory because of fear of domestic flare-ups following direct American involvement in the fighting against Iran. And at the same time, the State Department published a worldwide travel warning in which American citizens were advised to exercise increased caution while abroad, owing to fears of hostile demonstrations and flight disruptions in the Middle East. And incidentally, in a social media post that he published on Monday evening, Trump referred to the first time on the topic of regime change in Iran, saying, "It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the correct Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why shouldn't there be a regime change?" MIGA. MIGA. The new slogan plays on his old one regarding America and, of course, means make Iran great again. I think I support this idea, and I hope that our viewers in Iran will soon have a free country to live in where they won't have to fear their own government. What do you think about that, guys? Let me know in the comment sections right below. Until now, the United States demands were that Iran abandon its nuclear program, agree to a ceasefire, and return to the negotiating table before it is too late. When Iran did not agree, Trump gave the order to strike forcefully at the nuclear facilities in Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan with bunker-penetrating bombs carried by B-2 Spirit stealth bombers. In another post on his social media, Truth, Trump spoke of the damage seen in satellite images at the attacked facilities. Tremendous damage was caused to all of Iran's nuclear sites, as can be seen in satellite photos. Destruction is the accurate term. The white structure you see is built deep into the rock. Even its roof is far underground and completely protected from flames. The greatest damage occurred far below the ground. Bullseye. But how was this entire strike even possible? Well, first of all, the training and the preparations for these historic strikes took months, and the final decision to go ahead was preceded by reports of tense talks between the United States and Israel and other deception efforts intended to keep Iran from suspecting the approaching action. When the big day finally came, American officials confirmed that B-2 stealth bombers had taken off from their base in the United States of Missouri, but said that they were headed towards the Pacific Island territory of Guam, where the United States military has large facilities. Other sources said that no order had been given to prepare the bombers for the attack. Soon afterwards, the New York Times reported that transfer of additional American fighter jets into the Middle East, including those that might escort the bombers in a strike on Iran. The bombers were later confirmed to have flown east towards Iran, not west towards Guam, passing over Iraq and Syria on their way to Iran. And at the same time, another American missile destroyer was reported to have entered the eastern Mediterranean, and another group of warships was making its way to the Arabian Sea, but the Pentagon emphasized that the movement of forces was defensive only. However, the Iranians suspected something was going on, and on Saturday evening, they were already issuing threatening messages to the United States in an attempt to prevent it from advancing a strike on the nuclear facilities. And elsewhere, Reuters reported that absent American involvement, it was likely Israel would strike the Fordo facility on its own. And during the night, American media continued to report that Donald Trump had not yet decided whether to join Israel's campaign against Iran, but that a decision could come within days. Yet, parallel to those reports, the United States was already in the midst of a dramatic strike in Iran. In addition, after the strike, it became known that Israel had been in on the secret before the operation began, and that Trump had informed Netanyahu several hours earlier. The War Management Cabinet even convened during the night and followed the American strike process in real time. And today, we can reveal to you exactly how it all happened, minute by minute. Just after midnight Israeli time on Sunday morning, a U.S. submarine fired more than 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles at targets in Isfahan. And at the same time, the United States aircraft also struck air defense systems in the Fordo and in the Natanz areas to enable safe corridors for American strike aircraft ahead of dropping the ordnance. And around 12:30 a.m., even before anything about the United States strike in Iran had been published, Trump referred to the ultimatum that he had issued to Iran and shared on his Truth social media network a Fox News report on this matter with the caption, "Only time will tell." About an hour and 40 minutes after the Tomahawks were launched, B-2 stealth bombers began dropping munitions on the Fordo and Natanz nuclear sites, and the General Don Kane, the chairman of the United States Joint Chiefs, said that a total of 14 bunker-penetrating bombs, MOP, were dropped. A little before 3 a.m., Trump posted a dramatic message on Truth Social stating that the United States military had completed strikes in Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. In his words, "We have carried out a very successful strike on Iran's 3 nuclear sites. All planes are now out of Iranian airspace, and a full load of bombs was dropped on Fordo, and all the aircrafts are safely on their way back home." Trump praised the United States military and added, "No other military in the world could have done this. Now is the time for peace." The official White House X account shared Trump's words as well. Unlike the many videos released from Iran during Israeli strikes, during the American strike, no footage was released at all, and Iran itself did not respond to the attack or its consequences right away. In a media outlet identified with Iran's regime, the strike was even denied, and it was written, "There is no evidence of bombings apart from press reports from Isfahan about hearing explosions an hour ago. The only documentation is Trump's statements." However, a few minutes later, at 3:10 a.m., Trump posted again on Truth Social saying Fordo is gone. He also spoke with Netanyahu after the strike, and at 4:15 a.m., Iranian state television presenters warned every American civilian or soldiers in the region is now a legitimate target, and just a few minutes later, Trump told Reuters that this was an amazing success tonight, emphasizing that Iran must make peace now. And according to CNN, Trump hopes that the strikes in Iran will prompt a diplomatic process, and he's not planning additional strikes for now. At 4:40 a.m., Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked Trump in an English-language statement saying, "President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace." Tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with full strength. Your bold decision to strike Iran's nuclear facilities with America's tremendous power will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel did truly amazing things, and last night's action was unprecedented. The United States did what no other country in the world can do. And at 5 a.m., President Donald Trump issued another statement declaring that our goal was the destruction of Iran's enrichment capabilities and the elimination of the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism. Tonight, I can report to the world that the blows were a resounding military success. Iran's primary nuclear enrichment facilities were destroyed completely and absolutely. He also added, Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If it does not, the next strikes will be far larger and much easier. For 40 years, Iran has shouted death to America, death to Israel. They killed our people, blew off their hands and legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty, and in particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. Long ago, I decided not to let this continue, and it will not continue. 5 minutes later, Netanyahu issued another statement, this time in Hebrew, saying, in Operation Rising Lion, we have together achieved unprecedented accomplishments in the history of Israel. You remember that from the outset of the operation, I promised you that Iran's nuclear facilities would be destroyed one way or another. That promise has been kept. Threatening statements then started to be posted by Iranian and Houthi officials, prompting President Trump to declare any retaliatory action by Iran against the United States will be met with a force far greater than what was seen tonight. Thank you. And at 7:10 a.m., Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, the first senior Iranian figure to respond to the American strike, claimed on his X account that the United States, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, committed a grave violation of international law, the United Nations Charter, and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty by attacking Iran's nuclear facilities. These events this morning are outrageous and will have far-reaching consequences. Every member of the United Nations must be concerned about this dangerous, illegal, and criminal behavior. This is in accordance with the United Nations Charter and its articles allowing legitimate self-defense. Iran reserves all options to defend its sovereignty, its interests, and its people. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue reporting on all these issues moving forward, and as always, we ask you to help us keep spreading the truth by sharing our videos on YouTube, following us on social media, and most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Alongside the war against Iran, the Iron Swords War today entered its 626th day, and today, with the IDF forces continuing to conduct a campaign on several battlefronts. Southern Command reports that Division 162 forces continue operating offensively in the Jabalia area, and Givati Brigade fighters are now working to destroy Hamas underground routes in the Jabalia village area as well. And in recent days, the 401st Brigade Force identified 4 terrorists carrying a sack of weapons and eliminated them, while the multi-dimensional unit precisely eliminated a terrorist hiding inside a school in the northern parts of Gaza. And meanwhile, Central Command announced that as part of the expansion of Operation Iron Wall, over the past weekend, in the past 24 hours, 24 weapons were confiscated, roughly 130 operational activities were carried out, and 12 terror suspects were arrested by forces from the 10th Battalion deployed in this operation. And back in Gaza, on Sunday evening, the IDF Arabic language spokesperson chose to show the Gazan residents who is to blame for their situation, as the IDF scattered leaflets in central Gaza with pictures of Hamas gunmen eating fruit and other food in tunnels after seizing the aid flowing into the Gaza Strip. In one leaflet, Hamas terrorists are seen well-fed, sitting in an underground tunnel and enjoying high-quality fruit, with the caption at the side, for those asking where the aid is, it's with Hamas supporters. In another leaflet, Hamas terrorists are seen waving fruit they managed to loot from starving Gazan population with the caption, Hamas eats dates and grapes while the Gazan citizens eat worries. Earlier, a convoy of 8 trucks with food supplies from Qatar and the UAE entered the Gaza Strip via the Zikim in Israel in the north and was already looted en route by the Gazan crowd. However, the murderous terrorist organization Hamas apparently agreed to a 2-month truce with Israel that include the release of 10 living hostages and the remains of others who have died in captivity, as well as negotiations on ending this war. An Israeli delegation is expected to depart from Cairo, but expectations for a breakthrough are being kept low. And taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture of this, in the past 10 days, under cover of the war in Iran, 3 developments are taking shape in the Gaza Strip. They include a broad withdrawal of IDF forces as Israel is increasing the scope of humanitarian aid, and not only through the 4 distribution centers of the GHF Age Foundation, which are expected soon to double their number to 8. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on every development in the fighting in the Gaza Strip and bring you the whole truth about what is happening in Israel. And guys, help us spread the truth, hit the subscribe button, and most importantly, pray for the situation. Pray for the families in Israel, for the children of Israel that need to run to the bomb shelters multiple times every day. Pray for the IDF pilots, the females, the male that are fighting above the skies of Iran. Pray for our hostages to come back home fast, healthy, and pray that God's will be done here in this region. And let's unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.